Man, these fake cards keep getting crazier and crazier. What the fuck? Toon Table of Contents. The very problem that made STRATOS ban-worthy is the very thing that makes Toon Table of Contents so valuable on paper, yet so underwhelming in application. What am I talking about? What even is this engine? And what decks best utilize these cards? All shall be revealed, and more, in this week's episode of Engine Evaluation, Toon Table Cyber Dragon. Consisting of 4 main deck cards and 1 extra deck monster, this engine can be considered pretty minimal in terms of space needed in order to fit it into your deck. The first component of this engine is the only 3 of, which is none other than Toon Table of Contents. This card has a very simple yet situationally powerful effect, which allows you to search 1 Toon card from your deck and add it to your hand. Since this is not a once per turn effect, nor does it prevent you from searching another copy of itself, one can use the first copy in order to search out a second copy, use that second to search out a third, and then use that final Toon table in order to search out any other Toon you decided to run in your deck, which traditionally would be Toon World if not run in a pure Toon deck. The 2 purposes this card alone gives is deck thinning, and the ability to activate multiple spells just from a single initial card in your hand, which we'll get to why that matters a little later. The problem with Toon Table of Contents has always been that even though it thins the deck and allows for multiple spell activations to make other cards potentially have their effects go off, the card itself added no real value on its own outside of the final non-Table of Contents card searched. The issue with this card search is that there was never a good target, often having to settle for Toon World to just pay 1,000 life points for a final spell activation. This all changed with the 4th main deck card's introduction, the one of Toon Cyber Dragon. Not only does this guy have the same stat line, type, and attribute as its live-action counterpart, Toon Cyber Dragon has the same effect as the original, being that it can be special summoned from the hand if you control no monsters and your opponent does. He has some Toon effects as well, but for the sake of the engine, they don't really matter. With the addition of this card, Table of Contents was able to finally search something that could be a free body on board, actually allowing you to gain some field advantage on top of deck thinning and 3-for-1 spell activations. This engine goes a step further in giving advantage by not just providing a Cyber Dragon clone to your field, but by opening up the possibility to summon something from the extra deck at the cost of your monster as well as an opponent's. Chimera Tech Mega Fleet Dragon is one of the latest additions to the Cyber Dragon roster. Released in the Legendary Dragon decks back in late 2017, Megafleet takes a page from Fortress Dragon's book and allows itself to be fusion summoned using monsters from either side of the field. What makes this card more versatile than Fortress Dragon is its use of 1 Cyber Dragon monster and 1 or more monsters in the extra monster zones. Usually brought out with your Toon Cyber Dragon and a monster in your opponent's extra monster zone, this card's effect makes it not only the non-targeting, non-destructive removal we all know and love, but also a 2400 attack beater you can either use to attack with or link it away for something more useful. This is the end result of the engine, and it's not a too shabby one if I do say so myself. So to recap, the basic perfect scenario is when going second, you open with 1 copy of Toon Table of Contents. You then activate it to search out another copy, repeat that process to search out a 3rd copy, and then use that 3rd copy to search out Toon Cyber Dragon. You then special summon that Cyber Dragon and contact fuse it away with your opponent's monster that's in the extra monster zone, which in 2019, it's very likely that it'll either be a Link or some other form of extra deck monster in there. When you're left with a free monster on board, a deck with 3 less cards in it, and 1 less monster to deal with on your opponent's side of the field. Sounds pretty good, right? Well, this all comes at the cost that if any additional copies of Toon Table or the Cyber Dragon are drawn instead of searched through this engine, they're pretty much bricks. Though the Cyber Dragon can still be special summoned by his effect, by drawing him instead of searching by Toon Table, you missed out on a chance to draw a card that's part of the actual main strategy your deck is focused on. This potential clogging of your hands is this engine's biggest weakness. Though this engine can be used in a variety of decks, there are a few specific strategies that can take full advantage of what these cards have to offer. Sky Strikers and Magical Muskets are 2 decks that upon announcement, people immediately flocked to Toon Table for its ability to search copies of itself and activate in the same turn. With Sky Strikers, their spell cards have an initial effect and an even stronger effect once you have more than a certain number of spells in your grave. This dumping of multiple Toon Tables seemed fruitless, however, for Sky Strikers had enough cards in their own archetype to satisfy their graveyard requirements. In the case of Magical Muskets, the Musketeers have effects that activate when a spell or trap is activated in the same column as them. Interesting in concept but poor in execution, the use of Toon Table is a very on-the-fence strategy within the Musket community. Some believe it isn't worth it, for the Musketeers are hard once per turns and the Toon Tables do nothing on their own. I believe in the right format, if all the stars align, this engine could be quite beneficial to the slower Musket strategy. The most relevant archetype that this engine blends well with is the Endymions. Since their cards gain spell counters each time a spell is activated, Toon Table quickly racks these up. Additionally, since a lot of them require 3 spell counters to activate their effects, Toon Table is a 1-card activation requirement for them. Ultimately, as is the case with most decks, if you have the room, it's plausible to run this engine. Many people don't believe the deck thinning of Toon Table is worth it, so for decks that don't gain benefits from spells being activated, this engine sometimes falls a little too flat. Mega Fleet is good removal, and a free body on board is hardly ever a bad thing, but still, this engine just doesn't do enough when there are other card choices out there that do a lot more for a lot less chance of bricking. I give this a 3 Toon Tables out of the 5 cards needed to run the engine. It's not a stellar option to run, but it's an interesting one to say the least. Well, this has been another episode of Engine Evaluation. I'm JC Theater Yu-Gi-Oh! And thank you so much for watching. See ya!